The question is, what can we be looking forward with MSTR in this new month of March? What can we be looking in terms of setups, of price action, and structures, right? That's what I want to be covering today. So, before we do get started, right, it's always important to get a good understanding of what the characteristics look like when it comes to the company itself, right? So we all know that just recently, Michael Saylor says that he'll buy all Bitcoin if it drops to $1. He has proven his confidence throughout this big dip we've had, belo- going just underneath 80K that we saw recently. And on top of that, he recently did buy $2 billion worth of Bitcoin, and he's holding, I believe, around 500,000 Bitcoin, and he's staying strong. He is not being feared out. So how can this correlate to Bitcoin and MSTR, right? So if we first get a look at Bitcoin to get a better understanding of what we can be potentially looking at with MSTR, is that the CME gap for Bitcoin may have been filled. We were a few $100s off from actually hitting that CME gap at 77K, but we did max out this fib extension area that I really like to pay attention to. We've seen it fill here, 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 and many times in the past. These tend to be very strong indications of a potential bottom and very strong accumulation points as well for any long positions. What we've seen in detail is aggressive dips maxing out this area perfectly. Strong rally breaking past all these resistances. At first, we had a resistance that ended up breaking. We couldn't get confirmation of a bullish trend. Volume was too weak. And then it kept dipping, ended up using the resistance as support, creating new resistances coming up in the future, eventually maxing out the area and now breaking past these very, very quickly. What we have now is price is trying to reach the top of this red zone, and at the same time it did break over the 120 moving average, and it is currently above the 120 moving average and trying to hold onto it as support. The RSI is maxed out, but it can be pushed a lot more. So what we can potentially be looking forward to is maxing out the RSI even more, pushing past this 70 mark on the RSI to max out the red zone before we see any actual like more significant resistances being formed. Now on a previous, I think on the last video, I did create this new resistance area up here by taking fib extensions from the bottom of the dip to the top of the structure that we had at that time and bringing it down to the bottom, right? Or bringing it to the bottom here and then bringing it to top. As you can see, there's the structure here. Here's the bottom line, the top, and the other bottom, creating this area right here. Coincidentally, and this happens a lot, this area tends to overlap with imbalance candles over here. We've seen this happen many, many times, and these candles, most of the time, like 9 out of 10 times, usually get filled. And what we can be potentially looking at is maxing out the RSI, continuing to hold above the 120 moving average, and pushing the price even higher towards these imbalance areas overlapping on the fib extension as important resistance before we potentially see a significant dip coming down to either previous supports, previous consolidation areas, or any potential imbalances that are created on the way up. So the way this influences Mara, and of course, as you can see, it's kind of leaning over a little bit more. The volume isn't as strong to go ahead and want it. As you can see, this high didn't even surpass this high. So we are seeing a little bit of weakness currently. We can easily see the RSI dip down. But the thing is, before we actually jump into MSTR, so I can make things super clear, that if the RSI were to show bearishness due to a weakening structure in the short term and pulling it back down, the RSI will bottom out at a much higher price than it has before. Last time it bottomed out, it was we were basically underneath. We were under 80,000. This time around, when it does bottom out again, if it decides to take the short-term bearish move instead of just maxing out this red zone and potentially pushing higher into these areas, it will be very short-lived. It's not a dip that will last too long, just because we do have a reversal in place. As you can see, there is, I don't like to go off of these too much, but we do have somewhat of a inverse head and shoulders forming um, that can push the price even higher. But in a more serious view, we just have a higher high and higher low structure forming, surpassing previous, uh, this swing high, surpassing it, maxing out this fib retracement area from previously, maxed it out once again, and is trying to use it as potential resistance. So the possibility of the price having short-term weakness, which shouldn't last long, at max probably like 3 days or so, 2 to 3. If it were to happen, in my opinion, and it can come all the way down into this potential gap right here, we have potential imbalance. It did fill here, but it filled very weakly, as you can see on the hourly candle specifically. This area only, we had no candles close in the area. It's just a wick that broke into it, so it's very weak. We can still see this fill, and then as a way to form a little bit of a correction, and form a much more significant higher low structure instead of it just being weaker like these. As you can see, is very minor. But if you can see a more significant dip down, and if I were to draw a retracement tool from this point, as you can see, actually a little bit higher. As you can see, it actually also overlaps this area as well. So it makes sense for the price to go higher from here. We definitely have the momentum. But if we were to see a dip, and this is going to translate into MSTR in a moment, we can easily come down into this retracement area, which coincidentally overlaps the imbalance area right here, which could be a strong support before we push up higher. So we can either go up higher now or go up higher soon if we can get that more significant dip and push up higher. So I believe the dip is low. It is in due to the aggressiveness of the structure, how it's holding up, and how this area got maxed out as well. And as well, we don't have any new tariff news. A lot of that major fear is starting to die out. It peaked, and now we are just trying to slowly fade away from that tariff fear because it is a big factor on this dip. And as of right now, we don't have any major news events that can potentially push it down even lower, besides jobs report, potentially PCE, just a lot of inflation stuff. But a lot of the major fear, in my opinion, has peaked. So now these are the two pathways I'm looking at in the short term. The way this translates into MSTR is very bullish, because regardless on either of these two pathways, Bitcoin is very, very bullish, even if it has that short-term weakness. The way this represents, or the way it translates into MSTR, is that due to a lot of the tariff fears, and I've said this many times before, but due to a lot of this emotional fear, pushing Wall Street to want to sell even more, a lot of institutions wanting to sell, causing a lot of fear, we broke below this very strong support area right here. This imbalance gap created support multiple times in the past. As you can see, every time we did reach into this support area, we were much higher every single time. The last time we reached into it was before a lot of this fear came out. We ended up pushing higher. Then you had the Bybit hack and tariff fears overlapping, just causing a ton of selling, right? So we were getting ready to push up higher, as you can see, and then everything happened. And then boom, we started pushing down lower, invalidating this area and creating the new bearish structure that we're in. The question is, though, what is the likelihood of this new support area created by, as you can see, previous structures from the major swing high right here, confirming this downtrend? So I'm not counting this because this was all its own structure, and then it came down, broke past these swing lows, creating a new structure. So going off of the newer structure, this high, this low, this high creates this area right here as a strong accumulation, strong buying zone. Now, we did see the RSI max out quite a bit. The price started to pump up higher above the red. We have not even got into the 50 line on the RSI. Now, when you look at Bitcoin, with Bitcoin showing strength, even if with that little bit of short-term weakness, the amount of strength Bitcoin is showing is very much making me very confident and giving me enough evidence that the low can potentially be in and that things are starting to change. So now we are using the premium section of this support area, accumulation area, support area, as a strong buying opportunity. So we dip into it, came up, dipped into it a little bit more, and now we're starting to break out of it once again. If Bitcoin continues to show strength over the rest of this weekend, leading into the trading week, the first trading week of March, then we can see MSTR easily pump up higher, fill in this imbalance right here. As you can see, imbalance right here was only filled in with a wick. It was not closed. The body of the candle does not close in it. We don't have enough confidence that I don't have enough confidence personally that this imbalance was successfully filled, just minimally. So we can easily see with any more potential bullishness on Bitcoin over this weekend leading into the first trading week of March, we can see this price come up and fill in the imbalance right here. So what that looks like is like this, like just a nice gap there that we can easily fill. Now, if we were to fill this and Bitcoin still wants to push up higher and reach, not just push up higher towards the top of this red zone, which will be that imbalance gap on MSTR, in my opinion. And if Bitcoin were to want to keep rallying as we start this first trading week of March, pushing it higher into these imbalance areas represented also by the fib extension as the resistance, this can easily push MSTR to the 120 moving average and starting to test the wrong stock. Here we go. This is the right stock. MSTR can easily push MSTR past this imbalance area into the 120 moving average, which can be a major resistance, also representing that fib extension and imbalance gaps on Bitcoin. So that's where I believe these two start to correlate, start to match up, right? So this is the top of the red zone for Bitcoin. This is that potential fib extension with imbalance areas. And then if we can reach this area and start to show a little bit of consolidation, then we can look at any potential retracements, short-term retracements back into any potential support, consolidation areas or imbalance that MSTR can potentially create. And that's something we just have to wait and see how it gets created. But if that were to happen, then we can come up here, retrace back down to any of those areas, and then push up higher alongside Bitcoin. If Bitcoin instead were to have that short-term weakness leading into the first trading week of March, what we can see is continued short-term weakness on MSTR, potentially bringing it back down, retesting the previous swing low on this candle, possibly even bringing it down just a little bit more, trying to get closer to the 1.236 line down here at $216 and roughly 50 cents, and then a push up higher. So just like and it probably won't even go that low, but just like in Bitcoin, the short-term weakness that can bring Bitcoin back down into this area right here that I showed you guys earlier, which will bottom out the RSI. I don't believe that will last very long if it were to happen. And then what we can see on wrong stock again, on MSTR, is that short-term weakness representing or translating into MSTR. And then again, quick recovery, go ahead and then we'll be back on that first route after that short-term weakness. It won't last very long in my opinion, and I do believe that even at these levels, MSTR is a very great buying opportunity. and it is and even if we have that short term weakness, just I don't believe I personally believe that a lot of investors and traders should not be sleeping on this opportunity that we have right now in front of us. And I'm very bullish on MSTR. I do believe we can not just go back up into the 300s, but we can easily go to the 400s and 500s and fill in this area right here in the 400s before going up into the 500s. But whoa, what did I just do? All right, and then both pathways are very bullish. It's just that the second one has that short-term weakness before pushing up higher. That's basically my opinion on MSTR. I'm very much looking forward not just to what Bitcoin is going to be doing throughout March, but I'm looking very forward to what MSTR and even Mara are going to be doing uh, throughout March as Bitcoin begins to recover from this aggressive dip we've had just recently. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.